Can leadership skills be learned?
Yes, I do believe that leadership skills can be learnt, and that's something that I do as part of my work. But I also think that leadership skills need to be lived as well, and that leadership needs to have as its foundation one's values and principles. I call them, one's essence. So, in order for leadership to be effective, and in order for one to be able to practice authentic and sustainable leadership, I think one has to really live it. That expression, do as I say and as I do. So that's my feeling. Yes, it can be taught, but it does need to be practiced, and it needs to be lived day to day in our lives, not just in our workplaces, in our careers, and there really needs to be a strong foundation in our values.
Great. Can you give me an example of when you lived your qualities as a leader?
Sorry, can I give you an example?
Of when you applied these skills personally?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. Number of examples. I guess in my career as a manager, as a supervisor, particularly as a lawyer, of mentoring and setting an example and being a role model to young lawyers in terms of how they should conduct themselves professionally, and also in terms of their balanced lifestyle. Every day as a leader in the military, because I served in the British Army, so you are taught as an officer in the military that you are a leader, you must lead by example, you must be a role model, and that can often mean sacrifice and stepping out of your comfort zone. And I guess for me, there was no more stark example of that than a hostage crisis event that I was involved in when I was deployed to Iraq in 2005, where I was required as a leader to step out of my comfort zone and to really put my own personal safety and concerns second to the well-being and the lives of two soldiers that I was asked to negotiate for the release of. So I guess for me, having to harness all the leadership training and all my values and principles, and remember that I had dedicated my life really to helping others, was starkly put into practice and really tested on that day when I was asked to negotiate for the lives of these two men, really. So I guess for me that was probably the most dramatic and poignant test of my leadership. And then, of course, as a parent, every day trying to be the best parent and setting examples and being a role model to my small children, to my three sons. So I guess for me, leadership has been something that I have practiced all my life, all my career, and it's been tested on a number of occasions, that's for sure.
Thank you. And thinking about parenting and children and life examples, can you remember one time when you were little, the first time when you did something, when you had to sacrifice something, and it showed you some of your leadership passions and talent?
Yeah. I guess for me, one very vivid example of my childhood, where perhaps now looking back as an adult in my 40s, I can think, okay, well, maybe even as early as at maybe 8 or 9, I showed my propensity to be a leader, and to have the strength that I would later, I guess, use in my life, was when I was 9 years old. We were immigrants to this country. My father is Indian, and we immigrated to Australia in the mid-1970s. And like many immigrants, my parents worked 2 jobs to provide us, their family, with the best lifestyle they could. So that meant by the time I was an only child until I was almost 8, and then my little brother came along. And because my parents worked 2 jobs, which meant that they were not at home often, it really fell to me as the eldest to look after my brother, and we were often at home alone. for long periods in the holidays and after school. And of course, life was very different then. People wouldn't put their children in that position now, but life and the culture was very different then. So I think assuming that responsibility as a caregiver and really helping to run the house and look after my baby brother at such a tender age myself, to me now looking back shows how I really did have that natural leadership tendency and I guess the nurturing tendency of really wanting to care for and look after those that were more vulnerable. So that's really an early example for me, and particularly when I came into harm's way at that age, when I was sexually abused by a neighbour. For a long time I suffered in silence because I thought that my silence could secure the safety of my brother, because I didn't want him to fall to the same suffering and evil doings that I had fallen victim to. And of course, as soon as I thought that my brother was at risk of being abused by this same individual, our neighbour, I spoke up and did what I could to protect him. So I think the leadership and I think the strong protective instinct and desire that I had for others that I felt were more vulnerable to me was even alive and well, when I was a young child, as young as 8 and 9.
Thank you for sharing this. Do you see what happened as an opportunity to grow these skills?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I made a choice long ago that I would see everything that happened to me in my life, the positives and the negatives, the good and the bad, the challenges and the, achievements as gifts, as learning opportunities, because after all, I firmly believe that we are the product of our experiences, aren't we? And I wouldn't be the strong person that I am now if it wasn't for everything that I went through, the good and the bad. So I think for me, having those difficulties and that trauma when I was a young child, although, of course, as a mother now, I go back, I look back and I think, that would be a parent's worst nightmare. And I wish as a small child I didn't have to go through that, because it was incredibly traumatic, being such an innocent child, having your childhood taken away from you. But I believe that was one of the key events in my life that absolutely influenced and informed decisions that I made later on. Had it not been for going through that suffering and that trauma so early on, I may not have chosen the path that I had, and it was a path that led to such enrichment and rewards. And really, I'm one of those blessed people that has done something, that has followed my calling and has really done something with my career in my life that has fed my soul and that I have been truly rewarded by, and that's helping others, really.
Thank you. Let's now perhaps move on to the next questions, changing a little bit the topic, if that's okay.
Sure.
Is there something in your career that you've done and that you would advise future leaders not to do?
Yeah. Don't accept second best. When you realize that you are in an environment that is not consistent with your value, and that is either toxic, that is negative, that is destructive, that is an environment where you have tried to change or improve or leave your mark, but you realize that you can't succeed, and where it's an environment where it is taking away from you and affecting you as an individual and your feelings of confidence and self-worth, you need to have the courage to make the decision to leave that environment, and to do that sooner rather than later. And that is something that I have learned through bitter experience. I think that comes down to learning that lesson about choosing your battles and doing what you can to change environments that are negative and destructive and toxic. But if you can't do any more, you need to also put yourself first and if that is having a destructive impact on you, one needs to be courageous enough and honest enough with oneself to move on. I haven't done that in the past, or it's taken me longer before I have summoned up the courage to do that. So my advice would be, don't wait as long as I have in the past. If you can be honest, if you can have the insight into your self-awareness, and if you can be honest with yourself and brave enough, make the move before too much damage is done.
I see. Do you have an advice on how to facilitate this process? Perhaps finding allies or reading
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where great mentors can come in. You know, if you can choose at least one, maybe more, but at least one mentor that is someone that you not only have a positive personal connection with, but someone that you aspire to be like, someone who in their life and in their career has really represented all the qualities that you admire. If you could have someone like that in your life in difficult times, you know, like such as I've just described, to be a sounding board and a confidant and an advisor, and if you can really keep your ally, your friends, those that might just tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, but those that you trust implicitly, if you can keep those people close, I think that is probably the most effective tool and support for helping you facilitate these moves and these transitions, and helping you to be honest with yourself, to understand when you are in an environment that you shouldn't be in, and helping you to summon up that courage and that bravery to make sometimes difficult decisions, to move on and to change your environment.
How does this relate to diversity?
Well, I think it can relate very strongly to diversity, because often negative, destructive environments comes from the inability of the leadership in an in a workplace. Let's take a workplace for example, because this is often where people encounter difficulties. So in an organisation or a company, in a workplace, where the leadership and where the culture of the organisation is intolerant, does not embrace and celebrate differences, where they discriminate either consciously or unconsciously against a particular group of people, whether it be women, whether it be carers, parents, whether it be ethnic or religious minorities, whether it be people of particular sexual orientation, where that occurs, I think that's where environments are toxic. Now, we have a choice. We can either leave or we can stay and try and change that. Now, I would always encourage people to try and educate and raise awareness in their workplaces and do what they can as individuals, because we all have a responsibility to make our workplaces and our environments more tolerant. So do what you can and embrace that responsibility to try and affect change. But where you have done what you can and you can't do anything more, and it's then having, as I said, a debilitating effect on you, you need to ask yourself the question whether it's time to move on. And I think the lack of diversity and discrimination and prejudice, whether it be conscious or unconscious bias, is one of the strongest, the leading causes of negative and toxic workplace environments. It's a huge problem in this country. Things are slowly improving, but it is still I believe, at epidemic proportions, and we really, really need to address it. Organisations, companies, whether they be in the private or the public sector, whether they be not-for-profit, charities, they really need to be held more accountable. There needs to be more accountability, because everybody deserves the right to be able to go and work and contribute in a safe, tolerant environment. So diversity, I think, should be one of the highest priorities for our country in terms of raising education and awareness and implementing not only the strategies but the accountability mechanisms to ensure that leaders and organisations and companies all commit to in their actions and in their cultures and in their everyday practices, diversity and tolerance.
Great point. I think we could keep talking about this, and I totally agree with you. So we may talk about this later more if we would like. And I would like to ask you now, what is your personal attribute that helped you shape your career the most?
Oh, I think it was my single-minded focus and commitment to dedicating my life to helping others find a voice and access justice. And it's something that I had a very strong, I guess, propensity for as young as, being a child and a teenager and a young adult. And this focus, which drove my commitment and my passion, has been the single thing that I think that I could say has been the foundation for my success, for all that I have achieved, and more importantly, for what I have tried to do to help others. So, focus, commitment and passion. But the focus has been the thing that has really driven the commitment and passion. No matter what obstacles or challenges I've had in my past, being able to keep my eye on my goal, which was to help others. And whether that has meant that I have had to change paths or take a turn in the path, made different career decisions along the way, the focus has always been the same, and that has been to help others access justice, to help others find a voice, and to help empower others to find their own strength, to make their lives and the lives around them better.
Has this always been a conscious purpose and aware? Have you always been aware of this higher purpose?
I think as I have got older, it is something that I have been more conscious of. I think, life is a journey, and as one personally grows as well as professionally develops, you become more insightful, more aware of what drives you and your essence. And I think for me, the journey of personal growth has meant that I have become more aware of really what drives me and what feeds my soul. And it really, so I guess it was something instinctive and deep within me that I perhaps wasn't entirely aware of as a child, but probably from my 20s. It's something that I became more aware of, was very important to me and was part of my very being. So I think for most of my adult life it has been a conscious awareness and a conscious decision and commitment that I've made. It's informed a lot of decisions and actions in my life. It's informed what I studied. It informed where I worked. It informed the decision to leave my country and go to the other side of the world. It informed me making a very unexpected career move to join the military. I could go on. So,
okay, thanks. I think we got the point. This is great.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you now, what is the thing that terrifies you the most?
Gosh. I think the thing that terrifies me the most is influenced by the fact that I am a parent, that I am a mother, and I'm a mother to small children. And what terrifies me the most is not being able to do something to leave the world in a healthier, safer, more tolerant place for my children and my grandchildren and their grandchildren. So what terrifies me the most is the state of the world in the generations to come, because we're not looking after each other as we should, and we are not looking after our planet as we should. And what might happen to our world and our planet if we don't all change drastically, make a paradigm shift and change the way that we treat each other and Mother Earth, is what terrifies me the most. Because if we don't change, if we really don't change drastically, and if everybody our world doesn't embrace this need to change drastically. I'm terrified about the state of the universe, of our world and our planet for future generations.
If you had a wish in this regard, what would it be? If you could choose one thing.
I wish we had universally brave, committed leadership that would commit their nations to all coming together and putting aside our differences to make these changes that are needed. But with that comes courage. And I think courageous, selfless leadership that truly is committed to the long-term good of our planet is something that's sorely lacking at the moment.
And what do you think about the responsibilities of the individuals?
Absolutely. We all have, as I said earlier, I truly believe that we all have, as individuals, the capacity and the responsibility to create what I call ripples of change. And I am doing my utmost in my career and my life. I am teaching my boy to do the same. So, if I take myself in point, because it's all about living the good example and living good leadership, I strive every day to be the best possible partner, parent, role model, and I think that's what everyone should be. And if everyone could make that choice to do the same, I think that we would have such a strong movement that our leaders would have no choice but to listen to it and but to direct the change that we all need in this world.
Sounds like a revolution.
Yes, why not? Why not? I talk often about the ripple effect and how ripples become waves, and I guess that's what I'm talking about. That's my dream for the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's start it. Next question would be, what makes you tick?
Oh, wow. What makes me tick? A number of things make me tick. My unconditional and endless love for my children and my husband, who are the centre of my world and the centre and the reason for everything that I do. And I guess the other thing is my absolute passion and commitment for helping others to find their own strength to affect change in their lives and in their environment, and doing what I can to, I guess, really help with this ripple effect. That's what makes me tick.
Mm-hmm. What do you like the most in your current role?
The fact that I get, every week that I get to meet such different, diverse people, such interesting people from so many different walks of life and ethnic backgrounds and religious backgrounds with such different views, some of which that I agree with, some of which I don't, but that's the spice of life. So for me, what I love most about what I'm doing now is the rich tapestry of people that I meet every week, and the ability to not only spend time with people, but hopefully to inspire and motivate them to take action to affect change in their lives and in their environments.
Sounds like coaching.
Yeah, coaching, through mentoring, through running training sessions and workshops for people in resilience, in leadership and diversity, and through my public speaking as well, sharing my story through storytelling, because I think storytelling is one of the most effective ways of accelerating change, is it not? And if we can be courageous enough to share our story and to put that real personal perspective on how we can change and the damage that's done when we feed ignorance and the status quo, I think, in all the aspects of the work that I'm doing, that is so rewarding.
What's the best advice you did not follow, Rabia?
The best advice that I didn't follow, especially as a child and as a young adult was, don't waste your energy and your time trying to please everybody. And I guess that is something that perhaps most people learn as they get older. Part of that journey is personal growth. We spend a lot of time in our lives trying to please everybody. And I guess I was always a bit of a people pleaser. And I guess for me, my 40s has been a wonderful decade because I feel in many ways that I have arrived, that I am not only proud but unapologetic about who I am and what I stand for. And I really, really am not bothered about being everybody's friend and pleasing everybody. I believe that I am a good person. I believe that I live a good life and that I do the best I can in all the roles that I fill as a woman with many hats. And it's okay if people don't like me or people don't agree with me. That's okay. That doesn't bother me anymore. I wish I had taken that advice early about not wasting time and energy trying to please everybody.
How did you start enjoying disagreement?
How do I start enjoying disagreement?
I guess this is part of not being liked by everybody, having to stand for what you think, which may be different from what others think.
I guess that's right. I think I learned that from having to take a stand and having to challenge and call out what I perceive to be unacceptable and intolerable and inexcusable and at times unlawful behaviour. And, in order to challenge this behaviour, in order to take a stand, and in some cases, having to take fairly drastic action. So for me, several years ago, having to sue the British government and the British Ministry of Defence, which was fairly drastic action, really, in anyone's terms. That brings with it criticism and negativity and attacks. And I think you learn, you have to decide what is more important. Take a stand in order to change things and to give a strong message that this sort of behaviour and conduct is not to be tolerated and must be changed, or succumbing to attacks in the hope that you can then, fade away and not create these ripples. So for me, that required me developing quite a thick skin and being committed and confident in the fact that I was doing the right thing and that I was on the right path. And, respecting people's different views, but not having to cower down to them.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So I think that takes courage, but that also takes, certainty that you are on the right track and having that self-confidence and that commitment as well as that courage to not only take a stand but to follow through. And sometimes that means, as I said, weathering the storm, having to be on the receiving end of attacks and criticism, but also sometimes making sacrifices. Those whose opinions you respect the most will be those that support you. And those that don't agree, well, they're the ones that really are no longer meant to be on your journey, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
now, what's your next big goal?
Okay, so I guess professionally, I have 3 big goals. One is to do more and more work internationally, which is what I'm doing now, so that I can help more and more people outside of Australia to create ripples of change, because there are so many problems, around the world. So doing more and more work internationally and taking my message overseas. The second is doing deeper work and more work in terms of workshops and mentoring groups in order to help equip people with the skills to practice values-based leadership, to practice resilience, and really to embrace diversity and therefore, affect the real significant changes that we need. And the third goal is to continue to work as a consultant on the development of the feature film, which is based on my memoir, because I believe that the feature film, which will be telling my story to a wider audience, will mean that my story will reach a platform that perhaps personally I may not be able to reach. So I hope that, you know, that film will be a vehicle to share my story, and that my story will be able to inspire and motivate more and more people to make changes and to have the courage that they need to in their lives. So they're my 3 future professional goals.
Can you tell us something more about the feature film?
Well, at the moment it's a UK-Australian co-production. There has also been some American interest, and we're hoping that it's going to be, that filming will start in the next 18 months to 2 years. We're still in the early stages now, but it is going to be, you know, significant, and it's something that as I said, that I'm involved with as a consultant, because I'm very keen for it to maintain its accuracy as a story, to maintain its integrity, and yeah, there's nothing more that I'm allowed to say at the moment, but watch this space. I'm sure it will be something that everyone will hear about soon.
We will, definitely. I'm curious, so I couldn't help ask you for more. But yes, we will follow. So, Rabia, thanks so much. This was, I guess, almost it. Now, perhaps there is one last question about your ultimate goal. I think we touched on this a bit, but would you like to add something?
Yes. I guess my ultimate goal is to be the best. Oh gosh, to continue to strive to be the best parent and role model and leader that I can be. And for me, that equates to raising 3 kind, tolerant, well-adjusted, happy young men, and to enriching the lives of those around me, my loved ones, and to really practicing everything that I stand for, in the hope that I can also help others to live the same sort of life, you know, based on their values, and to affect change in the world that we desperately need. So that's my ultimate goal, and to leave the world in a better place than perhaps I found it for my children and their children.
Thanks. Now you gave me a hint for another question, which is, what is the role of man in facilitating a more equal and diverse world?
Men? Oh my goodness! Absolutely.
Because you mentioned your 3 kids, and I just thought about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you know, ironically, I'm a mother of 3 boys. So I am very conscious that I am raising boys to be young men, and I want my children, I want my sons to not only be kind, happy, fulfilled individuals, but to be individuals, to be young men that believe that everybody, regardless of gender or age or race or religion, everybody is capable of the same amazing things. So for me, men and boys play an equal part in embracing and promoting and practicing diversity and tolerance and inclusion. And we live diversity and we live equality in our house, because my husband is an equal parent and an equal partner in our family. You know, he is a hands-on father. We do everything as a team. We don't have, you know, men's work and women's work. He practices flexible working and parenting skills in the same way as I do. So, you know, I think it starts in your own home and in your own family, and we are emulating that in our own family. We are showing that as an example to our boys, and with the hope that they will emulate that in their futures and in their partnerships and in their families. So that's where it starts, and everybody has a role to fill there, and men and women, boys and girls equally have to come together and commit to and embrace and do everything they can to implement and encourage diversity. So the role is equal and the responsibility is equal, I believe. Whilst women, you know, whilst we as women have more battles to fight and more gaps to fill, and more work to do in terms of achieving our own equality. Men are just as important, I guess, parties in that fight and that battle. And the only way we're going to achieve it is if men commit to it and stand beside us.
I love that. A final thought?
A final thought.
If any. If not.
I think my final thought would be a word of advice, and perhaps also a saying from one of my biggest mentors, and that is, Mother Teresa once said, "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water and create many ripples." So my final thought would be to encourage everybody to embrace their ability and their responsibility to, in their own way, in their own lives, create ripples of change. Because ripples, when they come together, create waves. And waves is what we need if we're going to truly change our world, to be a kinder, more tolerant, peaceful place for our future generations.